So one of the hardest challenges in Halo 2 history involves getting to the tallest skyscraper in the entire game, and then somehow finding a way back down, on foot. So, can I pull it off? Let's give it a shot! On the mission Metropolis, there are 4 skyscrapers that are the exact same height. Now these skyscrapers are really tall and not easy to get to. If you've ever tried to get the scarab gun in Halo 2, you probably know what I'm talking about. And obviously my goal was not to just get to the top of these towers, but find a way to get back down on foot. So how was I going to do such an impossible feat? Well, in Halo 2, there's a tricking method called corner riding. If you oscillate between 2 angles on any building, you can consistently reset your fall timer each time you oscillate to each side of the 90 degree. And if you're not familiar with Halo 2, there's a fall timer that after 3 seconds of falling, you automatically die. And it's actually not possible to get down from any of these buildings regularly. If you try to get to the next part by just jumping down, you'll die every time. But before we get to this incredibly difficult technique, I first have to find a way to get up there. So I needed to save at least one singular checkpoint in order to be able to repeat attempts when I did inevitably get to the top of the tower. But the normal methods to get up there are the same that you would use to get the scarab gun. Either you can find a way to launch really high in the air, or you could lure a Banshee all the way to the end of the beginning tunnel and then jack it as it's hitting a load zone. But that method can take a very long time. And I knew once I got to the top of the tower, this was not going to be easy. So I wanted to save as much time as possible. My first thought was to just put on all the skull multipliers like Boom, Pinata, Sputnik, and Feather so I go flying really far. So I tried to jungle gym my way up. To survive these blasts, I equipped the Streaking Skull. You may notice I'm throwing grenades continuously over and over. Well, with the Streaking Skull, when grenade throws explode, you get a little health boost. This health boost can continue all the way up to double overshields. I was able to make it up to just under the sky bridge where the scarab gun is located pretty quickly. But just as I was trying to get on the bridge, I went a little bit too high, didn't make it to the upper ledge, and then died to fall timer. This meant that I would have to reset to the last checkpoint, which happened to be on the street as far from the top of the tower as possible. I probably spent 25 minutes trying to jungle gym up to the top and nothing was successful. Because I didn't have a checkpoint, I also wasted a lot of time traveling and trying to get up to specific ledges. So I decided to employ a more trusted and true method. I had the Pinata Skull enabled so that I could beat plasma grenades out of my teammate. Now if you stack these plasma grenades into a pile, you actually don't need that many to send you flying. But for my purposes, I only used about 10 or 11. But I set this up just at the base of the skyscraper and the corresponding sky bridge. Now I would just have to throw a plasma grenade at this pile of plasma grenades, get pretty much the exact distance needed to land on top of the tower. Hey, perfect. Easy. Only took me 45 minutes. After I got up here, I lined up on the very corner of this building. I was finally ready to start corner riding down this. Now I just needed to have my second player progress and get a checkpoint. And my second player happens to also be me. And my second player also happened to die accidentally, which means they would spawn on top of the tower, and there's no possible way to get a checkpoint. So I had one singular shot at this. And it was horrible. After some deep thought, not really that much thought at all, I decided to restart the mission. My grenade setup that I had previous was pretty horrible. There were two reasons for this. One, I had too many grenades, so I was going too high every single time when trying to get on top of that tower. And two, I had the boom skull activated, which increases explosion radius for grenades by 2. So I just had way too much power, so I wanted to get a more effective setup where I could much more easily launch to the tower. And also, I had used one of the checkpoints that I had available at that part of the mission. My plan was to preserve multiple checkpoints by setting up my launch earlier in the mission so that I didn't activate them. My ideal spot was on the street just as you come into the Metropolis area. I set up about 11 grenades, but this time I had the boom skull not activated. Because the boom skull wasn't active, I was doing this launch slightly differently. With the boom skull on, the explosion radius is so large that you have to jump on the pile of grenades as it's exploding. But without it on, you can just crouch to where the grenades are going to explode and then jump. Unfortunately, after just a few attempts, I knew this wasn't going to be possible. I wasn't getting nearly enough power and most of my launches looked like this. So I once again made the painful decision to restart and set this all up again. "15 minutes later, I was at the top of the tower. Boom! There we go! Okay, now I need to get down this massive sucker. I took my second player through the mission and got a checkpoint, and now I was finally ready to corner ride down this massive skyscraper. I found the first part to be very challenging to get the hang of, and that's because the first ledge you have to go down is slanted. You have to oscillate from one side of this corner to the other, and then at the perfect time you have to fall off the left side of the edge to get to a lower 90-degree corner. It took me about 10 minutes, but I was finally able to corner ride on the 90-degree angle just below the slanted ledge. But this was going to take a lot more skill. I knew that I could maybe pull this off, but I still had a long ways to go and another slanted surface followed by a 90-degree corner. A few minutes later, I finally did a successful corner ride on the 90-degree for more than a couple seconds. This time I died, but just 3 minutes later, I was able to make it all the way down the 90-degree and to the second slanted ledge. I would have to do the exact same thing that I did with the first ledge, but it's way scarier because you're going a lot faster. And I got nervous and missed the ledge entirely. Now, attempts like these are far and few between. It took about 35 minutes from my first attempt to an attempt where I actually rode on the lower ledge. But I came so close that I knew this was just out of reach. I would just need to lock in. At this point, I was well over an hour into this, but we finally made it to our second 90-degree corner. If I could just replicate this success, I'd only have to make it once. That's all that mattered. It's enough to make you cry. My biggest problem while doing this was having patience when going down the second ramp. Every time I got down to it, I got excited and I would always fall off the edge early. Usually this meant that I was far off the 90-degree corner and I had no chance to reset my fall timer by touching it. So as I got further into this trick, I had to make a concerted effort to go off the ramp way later than I thought was realistic. No! Now I was at my wit's end. I had spent nearly 2.5 hours trying this and I was so insanely close and I thought I should have made it. But regardless, on this channel, we give it a shot! Okay? I mustered what little willpower I had left into a couple more attempts at this. I just couldn't give it up. I was so close. So close. Hate this. After wasting 3.5 hours on a weeknight, someone started to get angry. Fuck this. After delivering an uppercut to my keyboard, I decided it was probably best to stop for the night. Fuck this shit. Because YouTube is going to punish me if I don't publish a video every single week, I had to boot this up the next day or else a video wasn't going to come out. But in thinking about it, I decided I wasn't really completing the true challenge. Bingo, bango, bongo, easy. In order to complete this challenge, I needed to start from the very top of the skyscraper. Before, I was starting on the corner of one of the ledges, which was one step below the top. This time, I boosted my way up to the very top of the tower and set myself up in this corner for our first corner ride. Now we're ready. First corner ride done. With the very top part of the tower conquered, I now needed to get to the next section. Now this section wasn't that far below me, but was not survivable by jumping down. To remedy this, I jumped down, but I shot a rocket at myself about halfway down my descent so I could reset my fall timer and fall slowly enough to not die. Okay. Now I had to complete the first corner ride from the top of the tower to the second section, and then get down to the third section in one singular checkpoint. But the hardest part was yet to come. I had another checkpoint, but there was another edge just like the previous one in the video. I would have to fall a very long distance, but the first angle would be slanted. I would then have to navigate down this slant to a 90-degree corner like before. That was hard. From here, I just jungle gymmed my way down to the bottom of the map floor, and just to be safe, I did a little corner ride at the end. I didn't want to chance it because, again, I didn't have that checkpoint. But there it is, one of Halo 2's hardest challenges. Boom! Back to street level from all the way up there. Look at that precision and accuracy. That was crazy.
We need to link up with those Marines, Chief. Head for their command post.